All right, welcome to Women's Midweek. Yay! I need shorter podiums. We're going to start off with a little icebreaker. I have a lovely assistant, Lily Spliley, if you can. Aren't you doing it? Yeah. So just a little bit of fun, really. Lily's is going to do an icebreaker.
You remain standing, so basically everyone's going to stand up. Yes. And stand up. And I'm going to ask you questions. And if you have it or have done it or something like that, then you remain standing. But if you haven't done it or don't have it, you sit down. Okay. And the last one gets a prize. So, do you want to say here, Mom? Sorry, I missed the end. Remain standing if you have a pet. Yes. Let's go. Once you're down for good. Oh my.
That's for the live stream, so they can hear you.
I'm mic'd up. Okay. Okay. Remain standing if you have siblings. No one? Okay. Okay. Remain standing if you can play an instrument. Wow, okay. Remain standing if you've made or eaten a pavlova this year. If you've made or eaten, yeah? Okay. Remain standing if you've already set up your Christmas tree. Oh! Wow! Yeah, everyone stand up again. Everyone's up. Everyone stand up again. Okay. We'll restart that. Yeah, okay. Remain standing if you've ever had a tooth pulled out. Yeah. At the dentist, yeah. Okay. Remain standing if you have more than one piercing. Oh, yeah? Just any, yeah, more than two, yeah. Yeah. Okay, you ready? Remain standing if you've ever had a surprise birthday party. Okay, remain standing if you've lived in another country. Okay. Remain standing if you have an iPhone. Wow, okay. Remain standing if you've never been to Luna Park. Okay. Remain standing if you've been more than a disciple for 10 years. Okay. Just you two? Okay. Remain standing if you've ever held a koala. Oh, both? Okay. Remain standing if you're a middle child. Are you both out? Yeah, you two stand up again. See, okay. Remain standing if you've ever been caught in a rip. A rip, like in the ocean. In the ocean. No? Okay, just stay up. Okay. Remain standing if you've ever been on TV. You've been on? You both? Okay. Okay. Remain standing if you've ever seen an eclipse. Okay. Remain standing if you have your driver's license. Yeah? Remain standing if you've ever had the chicken pox.
I've had it. Me too.
Okay. Remain standing if you've ever been to Hobbiton. Hobbiton. No? Okay. Remain standing if you've ever been to New Zealand. Oh my goodness. I have two more. No. That's not one of the questions. Okay, I have two more. Remain standing if you've never seen Toy Story 4. Oh my. Okay, last one, you ready? Remain standing if you've had COVID more than once. Okay. How do I take this off?
Oh, man. That was so funny, and you guys were sitting next to each other. It makes sharing a candy bar easier. Yeah, it's funny the little things you learn. We were going to have this technology, but it's not working. So that's okay. We're going to do it old school, old-fashioned, Bible and talking, no mic. This isn't really annoying me. It's okay. Yeah, I'm going to move it. I'm going to get the short people's one. Thank you, lovely assistant. Perfect. Awesome. This is my son, Luke. Cool. Well, I wanted to end the year preaching to you guys one more time. And you can turn your Bibles to 2 Kings 4 while I just give it a little introduction. It's been awesome to be here 2.5 months now. And I've been making my rounds and getting to know, making sure I know everybody's name. There's still a few people I'm working on, so bear with me. But it's been awesome to be here, to be honest. And I've just been impressed and encouraged and lifted up by your faith and by your support. And you've just been like open arms. And so I've felt that, and I just want to say thank you, and from my whole family. So thank you for that. And I also feel like I was thinking about you all today, and I'm like, I have a lot of respect for you, because we have women here who are like pioneers in the faith. Before there were Christians when I was little. There's been women here who have worked in the full-time ministry before. There's people who've worked for Hope Worldwide. People who have been part of mission teams, who've been faithful for many, many years and been through the storms, been through the church when it was bigger, smaller, and yeah, I just really respect your faith, and I just want you to know that. And I feel honored to be called to lead you. So I'm excited though, and I'm excited to do that. And tonight, we're going to be looking at lifting our faith more, so we can go into 2024 expecting great things from God. So the title of my lesson is Faith for Miracles. Because one thing I've noticed, even though we have deep roots in this room, I think taking it higher and expecting God to do even more, we can do that more. I think it's easy to get kind of cruisy in our faith and like we love God, we're not going anywhere, but it's crazy. We're not necessarily expecting the big miracles anymore sometimes. And to really expect God to do amazing things. So in 2 Kings 4, we're going to look at a story about a woman, a prophet, and a miracle. Let me get there myself. 2 Kings 4, verse 1. I'm just going to say a prayer, and then we'll read the verses. Heavenly Father, God, thank you so much for this time we can come together as women, and just even to be just the North women together. It's really special to have a more of an intimate group, and that we can be so unified in staying faithful in the northern region of Sydney, but also feeling responsible for reaching out to women all over the north part of Sydney. And we're just so grateful to be your daughters, to be in your kingdom, and to just have confidence in your grace. Thank you for your scriptures. Help the lesson to go well in your son's name. Amen. Cool. Okay, so 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 1. The wife of a man from the company of the prophets cried out to Elisha, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that he revered the Lord. But now his creditor is coming to take my 2 boys as his slaves." Elisha replied to her, "How can I help you? Tell me, what do you have in your house?" "Your servant has nothing there at all," she said, "except a small jar of olive oil." Elisha said, "Go around and ask all your neighbors for empty jars. Don't ask for just a few. Then go inside and shut the door behind you and your sons. Pour oil into all the jars, and as each is filled, put it to one side." She left him and shut the door behind her and her sons. They brought the jars to her, and she kept pouring. When all the jars were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another one." But he said, "There is not a jar left." Then the oil stopped flowing. She went and told the man of God, and he said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debts. You and your sons can live on what is left." Okay, so this is a really awesome, you might have read this story before. It's such an awesome nugget little story in the book of Kings. And this woman has a problem, a serious problem. Her husband has passed away tragically, and then now, because of the debts, someone's going to take her children to be slaves. Could you imagine? It's an intense situation. Yet God comes through in her time of desperation. So today we're going to actually break down this passage by looking at 3 characters in the story: the widow, Elisha, and God. So the widow here, it says she is a wife of a God-fearing man, a man from the company of the prophets. So these people were prophets in training. You could kind of think of it as like he's gone to seminary school. So either they were in so much debt because maybe he had taken loan, borrowed money to be able to support his family while he's in the company of the prophets in training. Or actually most ancient writers think that her husband is Obadiah. And so the story of Obadiah is when Jezebel is trying to kill all the prophets, and Obadiah takes care of them and feeds them and protects them. So he would have used his own money to do that. So that's why they think that that was actually her husband. But we don't know that for sure in the scriptures. But either way, you can kind of get a picture of what kind of family this is. They're God-fearing. It would have been devastating to lose him for the family. And they were a family of faith. So we see that she is a woman in grief and desperation, but in her emotional state, she doesn't lose her head. She's got her senses clear, but is still desperate. We know her home was empty. She'd obviously sold everything to try and prevent her sons from being taken. And we know that she didn't turn to God in anger. Could you imagine? My husband was in the company of prophets. Why did you take him, God? And even when we could be in such grief, we could say things that we don't mean later. But she's not in that state of turning away from God or frustrated at God. She's turning to God. She's obedient. She follows Elisha's instructions. And then she's humble. She's willing to be awkward with her neighbors. Like, can I borrow a jar? Can I another one? Like, why is this lady collecting jars? So then we've got Elisha. Her deceased husband would have been friends with him. And it's interesting, Elisha's response. His first response is, how can I help you? Which is interesting. I almost read it like, what am I supposed to do about it? I'm not sure exactly, but what he means by how can I help you if he's trying to process it. But in chapter 3, there's another story where someone comes to Elisha in verse 13, and his first response is, why do you involve me? And I'm thinking like, but you're the prophet. Like, really? So he has a common, this is happened a couple of times where he responds like that. But it's interesting because he doesn't wait for an answer. How can I help you? He straight turns to, what do you have? Let's see what we can do. He kicks into gear, and he has faith and sees an opportunity for God to work. He also challenges for her to get not just a few jars. He pushes her faith in that area, but what's interesting is he doesn't help her get the jars. It is interesting that he leaves it up to her to get the amount of jars she'll get, and he doesn't do it for her. It's not even like this gentlemanly thing, let me get the jars for you, but it's her miracle with God. He helps her have the miracle of God of a lifetime. And then the third most awesome character, God, in the story. He sees her faith, he works with what she has, and he fills what is empty. He gives her so much and is ready to give more, but there's no more jars. And God here clears her debts. Not just pays her debts, but allows her to live off of in the future. Yeah. So, sisters, we actually also have problems in our lives. Does anyone have problems? Sometimes they come up. Yeah, they happen. We have trials. Often there's great things happening at the same time as trials. We have victory in one area of our life while another area is falling apart. It's more rare that everything is just going amazing, like everything. Actually, there's always something that we're like needing to pray about. And so as we continue in this story, let's think about areas that we need to apply faith to and look at this story about how we can approach our problems that we have. So let's go through it again, these characters again, thinking about your problems in your life. First is, let's have faith like the widow, the first point. So to solve her problem, as we said, the widow humbled herself before Elisha first, and then also before her neighbors and before God. So a question for you, do you ask God for help? I know if you've been Christian more than 5 minutes, you know the answer is, I need to ask God for help. But really, really ask yourself, do I? And do I expect him to come through? Yeah. Or is it just sort of like token, yeah, pray about it. Let me do all this stuff and then a side note to pray. Do you obey when it doesn't make sense? When you don't understand it? When you're feeling, oh, this is hard. This woman could have said to God, why would I trust God when he's the one that took my husband away? Like, God is the reason I'm in debt, kind of thing. He was serving God. So now why am I going to trust God? This is the moments where we can struggle to really trust God. And then collecting jars was an action. So when you look at your life and the things going on in your life, what actions in faith are you taking? Because sometimes our faith can be theory and in our heads, and we hear it at church, and we do believe it. But when we look at our actions, it's not actually reflecting our faith. James 2 verse 26 says, faith without deeds is dead. But faith is really believing what you do not see. Believing God can work with empty jars. I'm sure she couldn't see the miracle before it happened. She's got this tiny jar of oil, and he's like, go get as many jars as you can. Like, okay. I think with what I know about the Bible, and I think there's a prophet and this stuff, I think I could imagine, I know what's going to happen. Like I read about how God does this with fish and bread and like, or the wine, like, you know, he turns stuff into, but like that none of that has happened at this point. She's probably like, okay, I don't know what's going on, but she had enough faith, a mustard seed of faith, that something's going to happen. I really want you to choose an area in your life that you really need God's help, and think about it in 2024. How will you put your faith into action? What can you do? For everyone, it's going to look different. And to really ask yourself, how can I have faith like this widow, where I don't know how it's going to work out, but I'm scared. I'm scared of disappointment. I'm scared of being let down by God even. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to go for it. Secondly, we need to have faith like Elisha, which is having faith for others. Yeah. Elisha was called to help her, but as we said, his first reaction was quite human, like, oh, this is a big problem. Don't you feel like that sometimes, even with each other, or maybe even family members or friends, and they come to you with problems and you're like, oh, what am I supposed to do about that? You're thinking that in your head. Like, okay, let's pray. Let's just pray. But we need to imitate Elisha in looking for opportunities instead of looking at the obstacles. Like this simple question, what do you have? We see that with Jesus when he's like, feed these 5,000 people. It's like, how are we supposed to do that, Jesus? What do you have? I got this. Okay, cool. That'll work. You know, I was at the wedding where he turns water into wine. His mom comes and do what he says, and he looks and he sees jars. Again, I love the jars. And he's like, there's some jars filled with water. That'll work. But I love how Jesus and God, he always used something physical to do his miracles. He works with what you have already. Like he could speak it, and he could have given her hundreds of jars of oil out of just saying, you know, like, close your eyes, now open them. There they are. Yeah. But there's something about God wanting us to participate in the miracles as well. And he wants us to be Elishas with one another. And sometimes it's easier to believe for somebody else's miracle than your own miracle. And that's how we need to be Elisha. But remembering that we can't go collect the jars that they're supposed to collect for themselves. Yeah. So what does that look like? It looks like challenging each other. Sister, you got to believe. What can you do? You can do this. Okay, I'm going to pray with you. I'm supporting you, but you go and do it. Yeah. God is with you. Bringing them. Last year in New Zealand, I had a coffee with a friend who's one of the Bible talk leaders and just really been faithful many years. And she started talking to me about all the issues in her life. It was kind of becoming like pinnacle of overwhelmed. And she's crying, and my husband has lost his job. We're not sure if we're going to be able to pay our mortgage. My son is getting in trouble with the law and being a knucklehead for vandalism and all this stuff. And the pressure was on her to provide for the family as well. And she was going through all these troubles that I felt a bit like Elisha at that moment. And I told her, I actually don't know what to say, but I do know that God is a God of miracles and rainbows. That there's storms, and then he brings rainbows. Yeah. And you're in a storm, and I can't see through it. I don't know what's on the other end, but I know this about God. And that was my role at that moment, not to give her answers or to solve her problems, but to point her to the God that we serve and love. And because it's not my life, I'm able to then, it's easier, right? To pass on my faith at that moment. And then several months later, she was messaging me one day, I just want to let you know the miracles and rainbows God is doing. Like, my husband has a great job now. Her son was studying the Bible at the time, and now he's been baptized. And that whole thing that he went through actually helped him become a Christian. And she has had this huge turnaround in her own life with God. And I just got to see the rainbows come out. And my role was just praying with her, being there with her, you know, helping her believe, don't give up. God, there's more to this story. And that's what we need to be for each other. But not putting the pressure that we have to have the answers all the time. But to have the pressure to have the faith in miracles. And also, to be like Elisha, we need to bring people to God to be filled. Like the jars. Think of jars being people. We were all empty. And you know, in Corinthians, it talks about us being jars of clay. How we're just cracked pots, but filled with something so precious. Yeah. But when we all came to God before that, we were empty, weren't we? We had to be filled. And knowing that people around us who don't have God with them are empty. And it's our job to bring them to God, but not to fill them. Sometimes we put on our shoulders like, I need to make them become a Christian. I got to help them get forgiven. I've got to help. And yes, God uses us, but to bring them to God. God is the one that fills them. Yeah. And it's up to them to choose God. But we should not minimize our role at the same time. Like, oh, God will do it. But really, he gives until there's no more jars. So this is and we'll talk about God in a minute in that detail. The other thing is, God often does miracles in private. If you notice here, she has to shut the door. Shut the door, and you and your sons go in and experience the miracle. You actually see this pattern throughout the scriptures. You even see it when Jesus is trying to heal somebody and people are doubting, and he puts them out of the room, and then he's able to carry on. There's something about there has to be faith there for the miracles. And so God wants us to have our private miracles that we can share with others. They see the results of it, but they have to then experience their own miracles with God as well. So think of having faith like Elisha. How can I bring someone to God? What does it look like? Let me just bring them to church. Let me just share my life with them. Share with them what it was like to be empty and now to be filled. How can I say it in a way that can connect to people? Have you spent much time sort of rehearsing in your mind a few scripts that you can pull out? I've got some religious scripts because I was religious, but I also have got some scripts for people who have of no faith to try and help them just plant seeds of faith to pass on. And then can I insert God's word anywhere with somebody? Because that's these things are like, it's like bait for people to be filled. Yeah. And sometimes we can get a bit weary of this, like, oh, yeah, I'm tired of sharing my faith. It's just, yeah, I've reached out to everyone I know. And we get weary. But then when we stop doing it, or when we stop making efforts to do that, we don't get to experience watching people's lives change. And there is nothing more exciting than seeing someone come alive to the Bible. And sometimes people will try it and then turn away. And we can also get discouraged and be like, that's good, I'm good for the year. I'm not going to be sharing much anymore. I'm just discouraged. And the way I get through that personally is if Satan can get that person who got discouraged and walked away, then he takes me down as well. Think of all the other people he's taking down. So if I give up now, I'm doing the exact thing Satan wants. And because I see the spiritual battle, and he's already got my friend over here, for the moment anyways, it makes me more motivated. Like, okay, right, that feistiness. Like, pull out that feistiness, sisters, that we are going to fight and keep fighting. And ask God, look, God, I'm just going to keep going, and you're going to do something. Yeah. Short time or long. And take the pressure off. It's not about you. Yeah. Just do your role. And let's talk about having the faith that God will give. Finally, looking at God is the answer. God filled her jars above and beyond. It's interesting because it's God's generosity of paying for her debts it's like a metaphor of how he pays for our debts spiritually as well. He loves to pay debt. He loves to fill emptiness with something. That's what he did with the earth. It was nothingness, and he spoke it in. And so God is always ready to give, but it's in response to our faith, because in Luke 6:38 it says, "Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be poured into your lap." This is God's heart. He actually wants to give you so much that it's overflowing, as we see in this story. But it's interesting, this verse. I love this verse. You've probably read it before, but it starts with give, and then God will do all this. Yeah. So again, it's all about our part. But what is our part? It's like, okay, let me just do my little bit. Yeah. And God will he's going to overflow it. And so I really want to challenge us tonight, sisters, for 2024 to be women who believe God to do miracles, that God is going to give. He's going to give in the areas of your problems, of your fears, of the issues, whatever those are. He wants to give you overflowing. Use the month of December to pray and dream. Maybe get a journal, and on one side list out your problems, the issues that you feel. And then on the other side, here's the obstacles. What are the opportunities? And start to change your mindset to faith towards these issues. Think about, what actions of faith can I take towards these issues? How can I be bold in my faith outwardly? You know, it's easy to get bogged down by our problems as well. But I think the whole world, we're always going to have issues. We're always going to have problems. So in the end, if you're going to heaven, then that's amazing, right? Yeah. So that's actually, in the end, all that matters. So over here, this girl, she's got problems too, but she doesn't get to go to heaven. So let me just stay focused on what's the most important thing, an eternal focus, and really love people. And then I really want to challenge us to take it higher in being Elishas for each other. When was the last time you even challenged your sister on faithlessness? Sometimes it's not a sin that we call each other out on, but we can take it higher in that as well. So if we have time, I know we started a little bit late, I'd love to break up into our groups and talk about some of these questions. But before that, I really want to talk a bit about the dreams I have, some of the dreams for next year, 2024, specifically with the women's ministry. So December 15th is the goal to get the calendar for the year out. And we're just trying to do a lot of fun things, like curry cook-offs and I'm trying to think off the top of my head, international service, marrieds nights through the year. So we're going to take a break from the traditional wows that we've been doing for a few years. So we have 3 women's events next year, and in March 9th it will be the whole church, because it's International Women's Day to celebrate. So that'll be in March. And then June and November will be North Region women's events. And so the West Region will be doing women's event, and we'll be doing it by region, so people can bring local, and it can be smaller and more intimate as well. So I'll talk about it a little bit more in a minute. And then the next thing is I would love to start a cafe committee. What is a cafe committee? This is, if anyone knows Agnes Salamo, it's in her spirit in New Zealand. She's cafe committee queen in Auckland. So this is what I would love. What I found is that in the North Region, there's a bit of fellowship after church, but then people tend to leave. The chairs are packed up, and the older generation, there's nowhere to sit. And so what I would love is, that awning thing outside, is to have tables and chairs and coffee and tea or some cold water or things like that, and biscuits and baking. And after church, everyone can come and sit down and have a cup of tea and get to know and mix and mingle. And there's a place for fellowship right after for another extra half an hour or so. And it can mix the different age groups and ministries, and your guests, if you've brought, there's a chance for them to stick around longer. Guests tend to think church is over, let me go. And so just to help with the family vibe, and I think it will also help the connections in the region, but also the reach out to our visitors that come. So what that looks like is having a group who are on the cafe committee, and they help organize this every Sunday. It doesn't have to be elaborate and, dramatic. But I don't want you to feel overwhelmed like it's a whole cafe. It's just, coffee, tea, and biscuits. So under the cafe is the baking committee. So if you feel like it's hard to serve on the cafe where there's a rotation, hopefully, you can, and me and my girls did this. So this is great for teen girls and preteens. You sign up to be to provide baking, and you know what Sunday of the month you're going to bring baking for the cafe committee. And then what we did is just have a little donation for people if they want to give, and that can go back to into the bakers who are providing the food. Yeah, but it's optional for that. So that's vision I have for North region. Hopefully you're keen for that. And then and this is not just women, but there's going to be a daytime midweek for retirees or people with chronic health issues who struggle. They actually struggle to come out at night and drive at night. And the older you get, it's actually not even wise to a certain degree. So we're going to have a daytime midweek starting next year as well. And that will also be their Bible talk. But to help them not feel isolated during school holidays with uni and teens, we're going to have them come crash the daytime midweek and make sure have some icebreakers. It'll be fun. And that'll be a great place for them to reach their peers to bring as well and have a community for that. But I would love to start some daytime women, so any stay-at-home mums. So maybe once a month having something, whether it's a play group with a small Bible study or just a fun activity, where we can reach out daytime friends, those who are not working and have that time. So this is what I have here tonight are some sign-up sheets. So if something is calling your name, so even with the women's events, the staff and many of you will help with the big church-wide one. But for the regional one, it's up to us to do it. So the other two events, and it can be anything from we could do a clothing swap kind of event or we could do a fundraiser for something, and I don't know, there's so many ideas. I'm sure you guys have great ideas. If you want to help with the women's events next year, write your name on here. Okay, if you want to help in the cafe committee or the baking committee or you're a daytime mom and you want to be involved in that, these are sign-ups. So it's up to you. Don't feel like you have to. But if you I'd love for some help and to be a team. So that's the other thing with Sydney. We're trying to really build up each region more. So we're obviously the Sydney Church, but if we can build up the regions more, we can reach more local people rather than traveling always. So for someone to come to a WOW that's an hour away, it's quite hard. So we can reach more people for God and connect deeper. Any feedback on that or thoughts or in general that anyone wants to say? Because, yeah, absolutely. Honestly, it's not, cafe committee and baking committee is not just for women. But I think the women are good at heading it up. I think the hospitality part, women are better at organizing. So we'll at least be a bit of the engine of that. But it can be, in Auckland we have boys and girls, serve on that. So if you have someone in your family, you don't have a preteen boy, but a teen boy maybe, who's just graduated, no. So instead of, I'm sure they'll appreciate it. So instead of breaking up in groups, how about we just have some responses now and share with one another if anyone's up to sharing in response to the lesson of taking it greater in our faith for next year in expectation. Would anyone like to share? Suzanne.
I was just going to ask if you would share some of the scripts that you use, either with people you meet who are religious or who are not religious.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So, I mean, it does depend if it's a stranger or if it's so a friend. I'll go in more detail. But a stranger, I just talk about how I'll just pretend I'm talking to you. Like, did you grow up going to church? Oh, yeah, me too. But do you know what? I never really read the Bible much. Have you read the Bible much? Oh, yeah, not many people have. But do you know when someone sat down with me and taught me how to use it in my life, it was a game changer. Like, and my parents are ministers. Like, honestly, but unless you read it for yourself and give it a go and have someone helping you, you don't really know how to use it. But once you do, it changes your life so much. Would you be interested in checking that out? Has anyone ever helped you with that before? That's my religious. But I get to pull the preacher kid card. So if it's a atheist or someone who's kind of skeptical, I try and find an in, what do they think first, and then, I'll just talk about, there's different ones. Like I might talk about anxiety. So personally, I've always struggled with anxiety since I've been a kid. I used to have panic attacks. This is before you had terminology. I didn't know what they were called. And so it's a kind of a hot topic at the moment as well in life. So I'm like, do you know what has actually helped me with peace is scripture. I know it might sound weird to you, but if you ever meditate on the Bible, it's quite amazing the peace you can get from it. I don't know if you've ever read a psalm or if you've tried it or that kind of thing, but you can actually use the Bible and it has an effect on your, now I can struggle with it a little bit, but I'm able to overcome and I'm not taking medication. Not that I have in the past actually. This is way long, I don't know what I'm saying. But just helping them find something where they can what's that about? Yeah. Or there's different scripts of faith when someone you don't do you think it's is the world just happenstance? Is it accident that we're all here? So I think have you ever studied science? Have you ever? Well, yeah, that's why I don't believe actually. If you're walking through the woods and you see a watch on the ground. You wouldn't pick it up and be like, man, nature, how did this watch just came about? Nobody ever, how did that? No, you think this has a design. Have you ever studied what a cell is like? The most difficult university class that in my university was called the cell. And because it's so complicated, way more complicated than a watch. Do you think that's just, happens? So there's all different kinds of little things you can talk. But in the end, if someone's open, they're open to even talking. And if they're not, it's not really often worth too long a dialogue. But women are more connected to emotions and relationships and love. And I'll talk about loneliness or depression or, I don't know, a peaceful atheist. Just saying. There's not that many joyful atheists, so. Yeah, so they'll be attracted to that the more you can. But anyway, any other? Oh. Thanks, guys. Any other responses that you want to share about growing in your faith? And yeah, Neelam.
So I was really encouraged by just the reminder that God loves to pay your debt and He loves to fill emptiness and is always ready to give. So it's a wonderful reminder just before the new year comes. And also I like the fact that you said that don't take the pressure off. Like I feel like sometimes you can feel more responsible than you should. There are some people who need to feel a bit more responsible. But for me, it was a reminder that sometimes I should just tell myself, just do your part. God will do the remaining things.
Yeah.
So that was a very wonderful reminder, and thank you for that. And it was very interesting, all the things you were sharing, though we discussed it in the planning, but the next year seems very exciting.
Oh, good. Oh, so I'm excited. Cool. Yeah, Aisha?
Yeah, thanks so much. I think the point that really stood out to me is the idea of we can't collect other people's jars for them. And just the way that, that was like the widow's act of going out and kind of acting in faith, like believing that what Elisha told her would happen. So I really love that, because I think that's definitely something I can struggle with, is wanting to like collect the jars for people, give it to them, tell them exactly what to do.
Yeah.
Just really helpful.
Yeah. That's hard, eh? To like let go. Go get your jars. Yeah, Susan.
I just wanted to say I love the idea about the cafe.
Yeah.
That's been the way of churches for millennia.
Yeah.
Well, that they've been wanting tea afterwards, and it is a great welcoming place to sit and talk, and and I think that'll be great. And
Cool.
Nice tablecloths and
Yeah.
just a cup of tea.
Welcoming.
A lovely thing to do after church.
Awesome.
So it's not just, okay, I've clocked in, I've clocked out, okay, what's next? Okay, now I've got to do this. It's behind me. I did it all before, but now now I watch TV at night. And, I was thinking, when I was at uni, I never watched TV at night. I was always thinking about the other thing. And also with Ryan moving up to Newcastle and him being part of the all the things that's happening there, I sort of feel like I'm, that's great for him and watching him, but then I'm not like, oh, what about me? And I'm in a I have my own mission team right here, right in Mount Cola.
Yeah.
What am I doing? Am I having that same? Wow, this is my mission team left here. So
Awesome. Thanks. Sharing. That's awesome. Yeah, you guys have so much rich faith to pass on. Yeah. Yeah, Danny.
I just really appreciate the lesson as a whole, just the idea of miracles, that God can actually work miracles in your life. I've been fortunate to experience a few miracles this year, but now I'm like, okay, well that's it. I've reached my quota of miracles. I'm not going to have any more. Like, that was the good part. Now I'm entering into this terrible storm or whatever.
Yeah.
But just having that vision for 2024, to not stop dreaming and not stop having that vision, that
Yeah.
God can actually still use what I have to give me even more miracles, which is just really encouraging.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Maybe time for just one more. Eugene?
I was going to move my hand up, but then you said one more.
Oh, you are the lucky one.
I just wanted to say, Megan, I think, I really appreciated when you asked, when was the last time you challenged a sister on their faithlessness? I think I think that just brings back, the seriousness of it. It's not really something we challenge each other on a lot. Other things, it's like, oh, yeah, you can't do that. But then when we're faithless, I feel like, I definitely don't, see that as seriously as God does. And it's actually something I've been thinking about, for myself. Like you said, do your actions show that you have faith, or is it all just theory? And even in the Gospels, a lot of the stories are to do with faith.
Yeah.
So I think that's actually been on my mind. So when you said that, I was like, oh, that's
Yeah.
a good point.
Yeah.
Yes, I think I really want to have a stronger conviction on faithlessness going into 2020.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let's go. Cool. Well, let's end there. We can enjoy the fellowship, and here's the sign-up things for. Yeah, and it's not just today. You can text me or message me or whatever. But yeah, here you go. Cool.